Hello and welcome once again. Jason Maraschiello here. Today I want to talk about DISC. Now, I've worked with teams for the last 15 years in different kind of capacities, whether it's professional development, team building, keynoting, and whether people are aware of DISC or not, I basically use it to inform so many of the interactions that I have. And yes, I know there's all kinds of different assessment tools out there. There's Myers-Briggs, there's Strength Finders, 5 dysfunctions. There's so many different insights and everything that we can use to kind of just get the same basic principle across, which is we're not all communicating exactly the same, and we come to the situation with different personality types and all of this. What I like about DISC is the way that it breaks down our natural style and our adaptive style. And it's super simple. We have your D, your I, your S, and your C. Now, your DISC kind of describes, again, your way of communicating, the personality, but also keeping in mind this does not define who you are as a person. This is kind of a moment in time. You could have had a very, a rough day, and the way that you might do your assessment that day maybe it's going to be very different than if you had a day full of rainbows and lollipops. Now, of course, the algorithm is trying its best to try to filter through and ask you questions that is going to try to get the best version or best understanding of who you are. But it's just questions. It's of course going to be subject to what you're experiencing. But what we can do is use these tools to start a conversation about how different people prefer to be communicated to, how they show up, what their default emotions may be when things aren't going well. And this again goes back to that original piece with the natural style and the adaptive style. So I'll give you an example. When I did my first assessment, in my natural style, I'm very high I. That means I'm interpersonal, I am fairly loud, I'm very people focused, I like to make those connections, and I'm not afraid to kind of put myself out there, hence being a professional speaker. Now, when I did my assessment, what I saw between my natural style, which is very high I, and I went over to my adaptive style, my C came up to kind of meet that I. And so the C's, that's your more like conscientious, contemplative, analytical mind that's coming into it. And so I started looking at that and just made me wonder, why is that having to come through more in my workplace? And I looked at the roles that I'm having to do. Now, whether it's an event that I've done for myself and I've hired out and found the gig, or I'm working for someone else, someone that contracted me out, when I was going more just on my own, I was having to make sure that I was there on time for sound checks, that I was meeting all the requirements, that I remembered when I had to be on stage, what the values were that the company wanted to, talk about. And it was taking me out of my strong I and my natural style, and I was having to adopt more of that C. Now, when we see people who are shifting from one style and shifting drastically to another style, this is actually the formula for burnout. And this is why I really love this assessment, because it can help us see like how many people are being really stretched in the roles that they're having to take on their day-to-day basis. So what I did is I used that information. I went to some of the companies that I'm working with and I said, I need someone to help me with this. And I hired out myself someone who can help me with those C tasks that I hate doing. And you know that you're working with the right people if when they say, you have the hardest job, I can never imagine doing the job that you do, and then I look at the work that they're doing and say, oh my God, I would never want to do that work that you're doing. So that's when you know that you have a good relationship. And a year later, I did the same assessment when my work has kind of been shifted, and now my natural and adaptive style has been like almost matched perfectly. So these are some of the different ways that we can use these assessments, is kind of see just personally how I'm having to kind of shift myself, but it also opens dialogues in the teams of how do we want to be communicated to. So again, I'm an I. That means that I'll simplify it to a loud, person-centered individual. So I want to make those connections. So if I'm going to talk to you, we're meeting, I'm probably, if I was just being me, say things about like, oh, hey, how are you? What do you like to do? I create a personal connection with the individual. Now, if we went to, say, the D in the DISC model, they're very direct. Now, they're also quite loud, but they're very task-focused individuals. So they would probably leave out some of that elements of like, oh, did you get away this summer? Take any vacations? And they would say, this is a place of work, we're gonna work. Nobody here is trying to be a jerk or bully or anything like that. It's the way that the mind works when it comes to having to interact. If we're here at a place of work, we should do work. Check off those boxes, and that gives us satisfaction. For me, as the I, making a personal connection, that's going to give me satisfaction. And it kind of works the same with the S. So the S, that is your more steady, they're the sustainable person, and they also like that personal connection, but where I am the loud I, they are the quiet, nurturing individual. And we need those as well, right? They're the really good listeners, but they love that personal connection as well. And then our C's, they are our data lovers. They want things to be precise. They are the ones that are also task-focused, but they're usually quiet in the background just thinking. And again, we use these models to kind of just point out that we want a whole array. We want a wild salad of different ingredients there when we are making our dish, because everyone has their unique strengths that they're bringing to the situation, but we also balance the challenges that we have. So the C's, paralysis by analysis sometimes. They can overthink and want things to be absolutely perfect, so they need an I to maybe come along and grab it and say, yep, good enough, let's go. Or a D to kind of say, okay, this just needs to get done, you have to do this. And maybe the S to say, hey, but you know what, you did an amazing job on this, and I can see that you really put a lot of effort into that, and kind of bring people together and validate. So these are some of the ways that we can use these different assessment styles. Again, I've been doing DISC assessment for quite some time because I like that simplicity that it brings. It brings that natural and adaptive style, and it's an easy way for us to start having conversations about how we need to find mutual ground when we communicate, which is maybe the most challenging thing, and it brings us some of the conflict as well. What I've heard is that a lot of people have had individuals come in to do DISC assessments and DISC workshops, and they've walked away feeling like they got nothing out of it. And unfortunately, it really comes down to the facilitator. I'm not here to sell myself here. Choose any DISC facilitator you want, but vet them. A lot of the times these are done internally, and those individuals may not have the same kind of background or experience to say, oh, okay, this is where this can come into play when we have these kinds of conflicts. This is what we could see here. And talk really about the nuance that it is to be a person. And as someone whose expertise is peopling, I like to see this work done well. If you have any questions about DISC or any of these kind of personality types, feel free to reach out. And if not, I'll catch you next time.